Hello and welcome to ONET Academy. This previously recorded webinar is part of the ONET Academy webinar series, a set of online training presentations. This webinar recording, an ONET Academy briefing, ONET Tools for the Older Worker, will start momentarily.
All right, with that, I want to turn things over to our speaker, Dr. Janet Wall. Janet?
Gary, thank you, and welcome to all of you to this webinar focusing on using ONET tools for the older worker. My name is Janet Wall, and I'm a career development specialist with emphasis on occupational information, vocational interest, program evaluation, career assessment, educational assessment, and so on. I'm also a certified global career development facilitator instructor, and I'm very happy to have all of you on this webinar. And I hope that it gives you some very good ideas on what you can use to help the older worker as they are transitioning into a new career, new portion of their life. I have some specific goals that I would like to focus on during this webinar. And the first is I want to just provide some background information about the aging population in the U.S. and talk to you about some trends in the population and in the workforce. I want to describe the situation faced by older workers and also employers as well. And I want to suggest then to you some tools that you as career development professionals can use as you work with the older workers as they consider their options in a global economy and changing world. This statement comes from a recent GAO, Government Accounting Office report focusing on some of the best practices and strategies for engaging and retaining older workers. And this statement, I don't think, is any surprise to anyone who's been paying attention to the newspapers and television and all. But in the 21st century, older Americans are expected to make up a larger share of the U.S. population, live longer, and spend more years in retirement than previous generations. And that whole notion is having a profound effect on our economy, on health care, on any number of aspects of life here in the United States. I'd like to use some visuals to show you kind of how the generations have been aging and the various numbers of people in the generations, focusing clearly on the baby boom generation. And here we have a chart of the population by age and gender in 1960. And this is the time when baby boomers were kind of entering the population in full force. So in 1960, you can see those red bars representing the baby boom generation. So the oldest boomers were about 14 years old at that point in time, with some of the boomers still yet to come into the population. So you can see that vertical line that's splitting that pyramid. Males are on the left and females are on the right. And this is, you read that graph in terms of age and also the millions of individuals in each of those categories. So this is, what I want you to do is just kind of focus visually on those red bars or red rows to see what happens over time. So again, this is 1960. This is what it looked like in 1980. This is what it looked like in 2000. So you can see, if you're following those red bars, the baby boomer generation is getting older. And you can also see the numbers of individuals in those categories. And also to focus on the blue bars beneath the red bars, showing fewer numbers of individuals in each of those age groups. So this is the year 2000. And this is the year 2020, which is not all that far from now. You can see that the oldest of the boomers are in the 70 to 74 age bracket in 2020. You can see the youngest of the boomers are 55 and older. And generally it's 55 is the age where someone would be considered an older worker or an older individual. So again, looking at the progress over time. And of course, here's 2040, where some of the boomer generation has already left us, and the youngest of the boomers are 75 years old. There is an issue in terms of the gender differences. So what we have here again is, this is the year 2000, and we have the same age categories on the left-hand side, and we can see at the various age groups the numbers of males versus females. And as we reach the older age brackets, we have many, many more females in the population as opposed to males. So, for example, taking a look at the 85 and over age bracket, we see that there are almost 2 million more females in existence than there are males. And so just looking at this, you can see that there are some profound effects that we will be feeling in the U.S. economy from just this one situation alone. Primarily because there are a number of females who have not built up a retirement income, and they're also going to be having some health issues, and economically it's going to be perhaps a hardship for many, many of the females as they grow older, and society will have to contend with this issue. All right, this next chart represents the percent distribution of the labor force by age category, and clearly look at all the bars, but I want to focus on the far right-hand bar, which represents life in the year 2020. And we can see that about 5% of the workforce in the year 2020 is going to be 65 and older, with about 15% being in the 55 to 64 category. So we can see that quite a large percentage of individuals are going to be considered older workers. All right, there are many definitions that I found for older worker, but the one that I find that's most typical is someone who is 55 years or older. And if we utilize that as the criterion, what we see is that from the year 2000 to 2010, and here we're in 2008, the number of older workers is going to be increasing from 18.2 million all the way up to 26.6 million, which is a phenomenal increase of about 46% over that time period. But then also, along with that, the boomers are going to be entering retirement age and leaving the workforce in large numbers. In fact, it's predicted to be so drastic an event that some people are calling it a tsunami, meaning that large numbers of people are going to be leaving. By the year 2020, all but the youngest boomers are going to be retirement age. Well, this is a problem for employers because, as you saw in those charts, there's a that follows the boomers leaving. And so, again, there are going to be fewer individuals who are going to be available for mid-level and executive-level positions, fewer people contributing to Social Security. And so all this is a mix of factors that we have in this economy. All right, so what they're predicting that the shortage of workers are going to force employers to actually keep workers on the job longer or even hire back retirees. In fact, between 2000 and 2010, it's stated that more job openings are going to be occurring because of replacement needs, such as retirements, people changing occupations, than from the creation of new jobs in the U.S. economy. In fact, 10 million unfilled jobs are going to be around the U.S. economy. Well, there's an issue with employers with regard to hiring back older workers. And this information comes from a couple of GAO reports that are available. And you can look them up by Googling the GAO number that I have listed for you there. But employers are wary of using older workers in the workforce because of financial disincentives, including things like the rising cost of health insurance and also training costs that have to be outlaid from hiring and retaining older workers. Employers also tend to put a high value on their experienced workers, and so a lot of the succession planning that they've been doing is worrying about the younger workers and how to move them up the career chain as opposed to actually retaining the older workers. Employers also have some negative perceptions about the older worker, such as they believe that they don't produce high-quality work, and it's not as good as their younger counterparts, and that they produce less work overall. And they also have the belief that older workers don't want to change at all. They want to just keep doing what they've been doing. And they believe that older workers have a skill gap between what is really needed in the current global economy. And there's also a fear of age discrimination lawsuits as well. So, some employers are, despite the fact that they're going to be needing the older worker to stick around and be productive, there are some disincentives out there and some worries that employers have. Some employers, however, have figured out that the older worker is really important to their business, to their institutions, to their agencies, and so that they're producing some sorts of incentives to keep the older worker on the job. Things like flexible work arrangements, working part-time, flex time, bringing them back in a consulting position or for short-term projects, creating phased retirement situations, flexible work locations away from the traditional office, so having them work from home, for example, or giving them time off for elder care. Also instituting this thing called the Snowbird program, which allows employees who live in different places during the year to work in both locations. For example, like Walmart allows people who generally in the summertime live in the northern states and they work for Walmart. When they go down to Florida for the winter, they can still have their work situation. And so it's a win-win for everyone. Some employers already have adapted their work environment to be more friendly to the older worker. A couple of examples. Some hospitals have implemented hydraulic systems in its beds so that a healthcare worker who needs to move a patient around, lift the patient from the bed, can actually use these hydraulic systems to at least get the person into a sitting position, and so that it's not as physically demanding a situation for the older worker. Also, in another line of work, some employers have modified the assembly line so that cars on the line can be rotated to provide some easier access for mechanics who have not been able to lie down to work on the cars. Also, some employers have implemented good benefits packages like health care and pensions and employee discounts. So there are ways that some smart employers are actually figuring out how to attract and retain the older worker to benefit their businesses. I'd like to show you results of a survey that was done by AARP. And what they did is they did an online survey of about almost 2,200 workers, and they did this in March of 2005 and produced the report in January of 2006. And this is a survey of persons age 50 and older and their attitudes towards retirement. And you can see the various reasons that people had about staying in the workforce or leaving it. So I want to focus your attention on the bottom two bars, where a large percentage of individuals in that survey indicated that they were going to stay working because they need the money, and also they wanted to stay mentally active. And there's a third situation, too, that I think we need to pay attention to, and they needed the health benefits. But you can see some of the other reasons that they were going to stick around in the workforce as well. They want to remain productive or useful. They want to stay physically active. They want to do something to help other people. They want to be around other people. So the socialization factor is important as well. But we see that the number one factor is that they need the money. And you can see some indication of why that is so important. In fact, a survey that was done by and published in the Washington Post indicated that 28% of the boomers say they will work part-time after retirement because they need the money or want the mental stimulation. So, again, clearly the same kinds of factors as we saw in the AARP report. The chart there, the pie chart that's shown on this slide, I think has some interesting and important information. If you take a look at the red portion or the red piece of the pie, this is the percent of individuals age 65 and over who are counting on Social Security benefits for 100% of their income. So again, 20% of individuals 65 and older are counting solely on Social Security benefits for their living and expenses. You can see that adding in another 13% of individuals, that brings us to the situation where 90 to 99% of the income is provided by Social Security. So this is it's a third of the people age 65 and older which have a really heavy dependence upon Social Security benefits. And you can see the other two pieces of the pie as well. They're counting on Social Security to some extent. So, money is certainly a factor as we look toward retirement. Now, this is from a report that was just released, actually a few days ago. And this is, clearly we've had an economic downturn. Price of gasoline is higher, the price of food is higher, housing prices are down. A lot of the security that individuals had in terms of their retirement income was based on the value of their home. But now with the plummeting of prices of homes in many, many parts of the country, that retirement security has been put somewhat at risk. And so this survey done by AARP shows the kind of changes or impact that this economic slowdown or downturn has had on individuals. And this survey was done people ages 45 and higher. And so you can see the bar chart shows that about 46, 47% have postponed a major purchase. They've postponed travel. Over 60% are over less entertainment, so they don't go out to eat. They don't go to shows. They don't go to plays. So they've changed in terms of that type of activity as well. 53% are finding it very difficult to pay for their utilities, and 66% indicate that it's very difficult to pay for food, gas, and medicine. And those are pretty high percentages, so the downturn in the economy has really impacted individuals, especially those that would be on fixed incomes. But here's some other findings in that AARP report that the percentages aren't quite as high, but I think they're equally disturbing. So 16% of those in the survey postponed their plans to retire or their spouse did. 23% prematurely withdrew funds from their retirement savings. So this is not a good sign either. 33% stopped contributing to their retirement savings. And that's not a favorable situation either. And then here's kind of what bothers me the most. 14% indicated they've cut back on medications. So they're not taking their medications as directed because of the cost, not only of the medications in healthcare, but of gasoline, of electricity, of food, and so on. And you've probably seen on television that a number of people are doing things like not taking their pills as often as they should, or even cutting their pills in half so that they're not taking as much as has been prescribed. About 8% got a second job to get additional income, and 8% moved to a smaller house or apartment. And I gave you the URL for that particular AARP report. I'm just providing you some snippets of information from that report. If any of you are wanting to get into more details on what's happening with the economy and the older worker or the older individual, that has much more information than I think you would be encouraged to go take a look at some of those additional findings from the AARP report. But clearly, older workers have to play their part as well by staying current and employable. Nobody wants an individual who isn't producing. Nobody wants an individual who isn't keeping up to speed with whatever is needed in the global economy and their particular job. Welcome and learn the technology that's necessary, and they need to participate in training programs that are being made available, be it by the employer, at community colleges, at universities, at training institutions. They need to stay open to new ideas. So we can't, actually, not just the older worker, but nobody can be satisfied with the status quo. The economy changes. The workplace changes. The needs change. Emerging occupations come online. Technologies change. So they need to be open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. And they need to recognize where job opportunities are. And they can do this by focusing on in-demand occupations where there are large employment needs. And the way to find that kind of information clearly is by going to the CareerVoyages website, which does focus on the high-growth, high-demand occupations. And you can find that website at www.careervoyages.gov. And it focuses on the high-growth industries and emerging industries, also the occupations that are associated with those industries. So these are the occupations that are the fastest growing, have the largest employment, are important to the U.S. economy and homeland security, and are being transformed by technology. So if you're not familiar with this website, by all means, go to careervoyages.gov and see what's there. And it's a very rich website. It's based on ONET information, which is the most updated and comprehensive set of information on occupations that exists. What I want to do now is focus on the ONET system itself and supporting tools that you can utilize to actually help the older worker stay on the job or transition into some new occupation. And there are 4 basic tools that we'll be working with. The first is the skill search. The second is a skill gap and skill analysis. And then finding education and training institutions. And then also looking at the service locator. So let's get started on some of those ONET-related tools. All right, I want to do this in a context of a particular older worker scenario. So we have Sally, who's been working as a home health care practitioner for 25 years. And she's been a good employee. She's kept up with her education through short courses and seminars. And she's now 56 years old and is looking toward retirement, hopefully in a better paying position and in a position that has less physical exertion. And she's willing to take additional coursework and training to upgrade her skills to be qualified for a new occupation. She also wants to move to Florida in her retirement years. And so would like to have a move to Florida in the near term and settle in so that she can retire there. So how can we help Sally? All right, using ONET Online is one way that you can do this. And hopefully you are factors and various tools and various sets of information and obtaining that information. Probably 1,000 ways to use ONET Online, but I want to focus on the skill search. And so by clicking on the skill search, which I have outlined in red there, what this does is it brings up a set of skills. And those skills are categorized according to basic skills, complex problem-solving skills, resource management skills, social skills, system skills, and technical skills. And so what you would do as a career development professional working with Sally, or Sally could do herself, is go to ONET Online, go to the skill search, and check off the skills from each of the groups, selecting all the skills that she believes she has or your older worker believes that they have. And so they could check off active learning, active listening, critical thinking, learning strategies, and so on in the basic skills. But they could also click off their skills in the other areas, such as complex problem-solving skills, the resource management skills, social skills, and so on. So again, this whole laundry list of skills comes up in the skill search, and the individual would just check off which ones they believe they have and would be able to utilize in an occupation. Once that's done, what comes up is a list of occupations that match up with the skills that person indicated they had. And so we see on the right-hand side a partial listing of the skills that come up. In fact, for this particular search with Sally, 21 matches came up, or 21 occupations came up, and you're just seeing a few of them. All right, and we see that respiratory therapy technician is number 1 on the list. But I want to also point out a couple other things on this slide. If you take a look at the left-hand side, we see the numbers of skills matched. So of those that Sally put into the skill search, the top occupation matched up with 14 of those skills. And then it's rank ordered to move toward fewer matches. So we see the next occupation has 13 matches, and actually the next 2 beyond that have 13 matches. Then it goes down to 12 and 11 and so on. The middle column there is the job zone. And the job zone is just a number running from 1 through 5 that is a representation of the amount of education, training, and experience that's generally required by a person in that occupation. So we see that respiratory therapy technicians is on the list, and Sally says, well, I'd like to take a look at this occupation and see if it's something I'd like to get into. So what she would do is click on that occupational title, and she could click on any of these occupations, and in doing so, up comes what's called a summary report. And the summary report has just an enormous amount of excellent information about the occupation, to include the occupational title, a brief description of that occupation, a sample of reported job titles, and also the tasks, knowledge, skills, abilities, work activities, work context, job zone, work styles, and wages and employment. And so we see on this slide a series of tasks that are associated with this occupation. And Sally reads over those tasks. But she also takes a look at the knowledge, skills, and abilities, but she also scrolls down to the bottom of that summary report to take a look at things like the wages and employment. And so she can see the wages, typical wages in the United States as a whole, and also in the state of Florida, which is the place that she wants to move to and eventually retire. She also takes a look at the state and national trends. Is this occupation a growing occupation, declining occupation? What's the situation? You can see this for the United States as a whole, and also from the state of Florida, in the state of Florida. After reviewing the information found in the summary report, Sally observes that this occupation, respiratory therapy technician, less physical exertion than her current job. Probably she needs to obtain more training and education because this is a job zone 3 occupation, while her current occupation of home health care practitioner is a job zone 2. And the salary for respiratory therapy technician is about twice that of home health care. So that's pretty attractive to Sally. And she also sees that the occupation is growing slightly in Florida, which is, again, a very good sign for some job prospects. All right, now what Sally wants to do is say, okay, what of the skills that I currently have would work in this new occupation? Which ones could I apply and utilize in this new occupation? And what kinds of skills would I need to obtain in order to be better qualified for this new occupation of respiratory therapy technician? So Sally, or someone who works with Sally in terms of her career transition, would use a skill gap analysis. And the URL for that is shown, and it's part of America's Career Information Network, so it's acinet.org. And again, the skill gap analysis or skills profiler. And she would go to the skills profiler, and there are many ways to use the skills profiler. But again, for Sally, she wants to know how she can apply her current skills to this new occupation and what are the skill gaps that she might have. So what she does is she puts in her current occupation of home health aide. What that does then is it brings up those skills that are considered important for home health aides. So you can see the skills that have come up on the list. We have active learning, active listening, critical thinking, learning strategies, and so on. And there's a skill description. So what Sally does then is she will check off those skills that she believes she has. And again, these are skills that are brought up only for this occupation of home health aides. So here we have a listing of the social skills. So she checks off some of those, and also complex problem-solving skills. Once she does that, what the tool does is then it brings up those skills that she identified. And now what she does is she has to determine whether, at what level she has the skills that she said she had. And what the tool does is it provides what the average level skill is as reported by job incumbents. So let's take a look at this first area of basic skills and particularly active learning. And we see this average skill level as determined by job incumbents is 2.91 on a 1 through 7 scale. Okay, and again, this comes from surveys done by job incumbents working in this particular occupation. This tool defaults to the average skill level. And so if Sally believes she's average in each of these skills, then the tool is completed for her already. She's entered all the information. She could indicate whether or not she has the skill at a higher level than average by, again, let's look at the active learning. If she thinks she is better than average on that skill, she would rank herself at a 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, depending upon how much better she thinks that she is than the average individual in that occupation on that particular skill. All right, on that first skill, she believes she's average, so she lets the default stand. But for critical thinking, you can see that the average skill level is 2.89. Sally said, I think I am better on that skill than average, and I'm going to rate myself as a 4 on that skill. For learning strategies, you can see the average skill level. She says, I don't think I'm quite as good as average on that particular skill, so I'm going to rate myself as a 2. And so she does this on all of the skills that she said she had back in the previous step of this tool. She also selects the work activities. And again, these are tailored to her current occupation of home health aide, and she checks off those work activities that she performs as part of her duties. What the tool does then is provides a final report. And basically, this is just a summary of the input that Sally has provided. So we can see that on coordination, critical thinking, and persuasion, she rated herself higher than average. On active learning, service orientation, and social perceptiveness, average. And on those other three skills, lower than average. And we also have a listing of her work activities. And I think this is kind of useful if Sally needs, for example, to create a resume, or if you're working with her to create a resume, especially these work activities might be very helpful in crafting the language for that resume. All right, what happens in the next step then is that based on her input, she gets a listing of occupations. And we can see that the occupation of cashier matched 41.7% of the skills that she had indicated, and so on down the line. We see that there are many, many occupations. Matter of fact, there are 6 pages of occupations, and the relative match is provided for each of the occupations on those listings. Also, she gets a list of occupations based on work activities. The great thing about this tool, in my view, is that once you put that information in about your current occupation and your skills, you can match up your current situation to any occupation within the ONET system. And so this is what we're going to do now, is Sally says, I'm kind of interested in that respiratory therapy technician occupation, and I want to see how my skills match up with the skills required in respiratory therapy technician. And so very simple to do that, just selecting the occupation, and up comes a chart that I think can be considered an individual career plan, an individual education plan, an individual training plan. And I want to describe to you what comes up on the list and how it comes up. If we take a look at, and now we're looking at what Sally said her skills were versus the requirements of this new occupation. So it's bouncing up against the requirements of this new occupation. So the left-hand side shows a match. And in that column would be listed those skills that Sally said she had, and she had the skills at the level that is required by this new occupation. On the right-hand side, where it says did not select, these are the skills that are important to this new occupation of respiratory therapy technician, but Sally did not indicate that she had those skills. Now maybe she reads the list and says, well, actually I do have those skills and I should have included them. So she can go back and actually change her input if she wants to do that. Or she can say, I don't have those skills after all, and I'm willing to get them, to get into this new occupation, but I realize I might have to work pretty hard to do that. Or I have absolutely no interest in acquiring these skills, so I guess respiratory therapy technician is not something that is in my future. The middle column represents those skills that Sally said she had, but they're not at the level that is required by this new occupation. So here, this column is headed may need training. So again, this is the basis for discussion with Sally or for any person who is looking to transition into a new occupation, to give them an idea of what they might need to do in order to make it into this new occupation based on the skills and the skill levels that they currently have. So again, I think this is an excellent starting point for an individual education plan, individual training plan, a career management plan. All right, so Sally says, well, I'm willing to go for this new occupation. There's a lot of favorable things about it. I know I'm going to have to get some additional education and training, and I want to find now a school where I can get that training to become a respiratory therapy technician. But the school needs to be in Florida, which is where I'm moving to, and I plan to eventually retire there. So she goes to National Center for Education Statistics tool, which provides education and training information on a nationwide basis. And here, what she can do is she can select the state that she wants the institution to be in. She can actually select the city, the zip code, and also the distance of that institution from that city or from that zip code. She can select the kind of institution she wants, and then she would also select the instructional program that she's interested in. So clearly, this is in the healthcare field, so she selects health professionals and related clinical sciences. And then she would ask the tool to go to work, and what the tool does is then it provides a listing of institutions that match the criteria that she selected. And in this instance, there were 11 institutions that have come up, and they're all matching her criteria. They're all in the Tampa area. And so she can click on any of these institutional titles to get more information about the education and training agency or institution. So she can find out what the requirements are for entry, the tuition, the specialized programs that they have, and so on. She can also use the service locator, and the URL for that is listed there, servicelocator.org. And here again, you put in zip code or a city and state. We put in Tampa, Florida. This is going to help find various one-stop centers and so on. And she wants it within 25 miles. And she wants to select a service she's a worker, so she wants that. And she can select the kind of assistance that she wants. And in this instance, we're wanting getting skills in education. And so she puts in her criteria, and up come two agencies that match her criteria: Workforce Tampa Center in North Tampa and Workforce Brandon Center in Brandon. And she decides to take a look at what the Brandon Center has to offer. And we can see here what the location is, the type of office. Both of these actually are comprehensive one-stop career centers, so you can get a map and direction right from here. But also, she can find general information about the center, such as the phone number, fax number, email address, and so on. And she can find the specific services that are provided. And in this instance, we're looking at the education and training services. So here she can learn new job skills, she can improve her current job skills, learn about the world of business, prepare for the GED, improve reading, writing, and math, and improve English skills, get information about schools and training programs. So she can also get an idea of where she can get this additional training from the service centers as well. And there are other things that are available, other services that are available also. But again, I'm focusing on just the education and training opportunities. So we've gone over the 4 tools that I think can be particularly helpful for the older worker in transition. And in review, what we've done is we've gained some information about the aging population and about the older worker and the workforce in general. And also taken a look at some tools that can assist the older workers, such as the skills search, the skills gap analysis, finding education and training opportunities, and finding local services. So I think there are many, many other ways that ONET can be of assistance, but here I think are some specific ones that you might want to take a look at as you are working with the older worker. And so at this time, I'd like to pause and see if you have any questions. And please go ahead and put your question in the chat feature, and submit that so I can read it and attempt to answer it. Also, if you want, you can unmute your phone by hitting *6, introducing yourself and asking the question or making the comment, and then please remute your phone by hitting *6 again. But I have had a question come in, and it says, can you define the difference between job zones? Job zone is in 5 categories. And if you go to ONET Online, you can find more comprehensive descriptions of each of the job zones. But basically, a job zone of 1 is at the lowest level of education, training, and experience. So we're talking about, say, a high school diploma, GED, maybe in some instances a non-graduate. A job zone of 5, which is at the highest level of education, training, and experience, would be the amount of education and training that would be required, say, for example, a surgeon or an attorney or someone who actually has to have just an enormous number of years of education and training and other qualifications. And so they're increasing levels between 1 and 5. So again, it's just a descriptor, a numerical descriptor of education, training, and experience requirements that have been identified for the various ONET occupations. All right, and I see a question has come in about the URLs that I have identified. What I would suggest is, Gary mentioned early on that this is being recorded and will be archived, and so will the PowerPoint slides. And so you can actually download the slides and pick up the URLs from there. A question, where can you find out what industries or regions are more amenable to older workers? My suggestion is to go to AARP, which actually does do studies about the user-friendly, the older worker-friendly businesses, and they actually do rankings, I think. And yes, there's a comment or question that came in. Did you say we can access the rest of the AARP survey for additional information? Absolutely. There's a fairly large report that has been produced and posted on the AARP website, and I did provide the specific URL for that, so you can pick up that report and take a look at the details. And again, I really would recommend that you do that, because there's some very interesting information in that report that clearly for purposes of the time I could not cover everything. Okay, is ONET doing research on data and presentations for employers that will help counter myths about risks of hiring older workers and stress advantages of hiring older workers? I'm not sure that the ONET people in particular are doing that, but I did mention to you some GAO reports that that you should look at. That actually, the 2 reports that I referenced, what they did is they brought in panels of employers and asked them questions about, what is the problem with older workers? What are your perceptions? What are you doing about encouraging older workers to stay on the job? And so I think you will find those GAO reports to be of interest as well. So my recommendation would be to dig into those and see what you find there. And actually, there are a couple other GAO reports that are also available that I didn't utilize in this webinar. So once you get to one of them that I did reference, it will probably reference the other reports. And these reports all have references to other studies, other reports that other groups have done. So you can dig into this from that perspective. Okay, and keep sending your questions in, and I will attempt to address them. But what I would like to do now is to actually encourage you to take advantage of some of these opportunities that are available to you to highlight what you are doing using ONET, be it with the older worker, with a person with disabilities, with a military member in transition, with a person who is just entry level, a dislocated worker, whatever the audience, whatever the use. If you're using ONET in a way that would benefit others to know about, I want you to be part of and take advantage of these opportunities. One is a spotlight, and a spotlight is merely an interview and your photograph that is posted on the ONET Knowledge site. And so if you want to be highlighted in that way, one of my colleagues will call you and do an interview, brief interview with you, and actually eventually your interview and your photograph will be posted on the ONET Knowledge site. And take a look at that site, onnetknowledgesite.com, and you can see some examples of spotlights to get a better feel for that. Also, we have two other unique opportunities that I hope you take advantage of. One is a podcast, which is an audio interview, and what would happen is we would call you, talk to you for a while. From that conversation, develop some interview questions, and then once we all agree on those interview questions, what we would do is a formal run-through, kind of a practice run-through, and then once we're satisfied, we would then call into a toll-free number, and on the other end of the line would be Gary Gonzalez, and he will actually record our interview. And eventually that will be posted on the ONET's website, onetacademy.com or the ONET Knowledge site, and other people will be able to listen to this podcast and get some ideas from you on how they can actually improve their use of ONET. And also, we are focusing over the next several months on user-focused webinars. So instead of having me present a webinar, we really want to have ONET users do that. And so what we're looking for are people who are using ONET, and we're going to help them develop, say, a 10 to 15-minute presentation with PowerPoint slides. We'll put you together with other people in the same theme, and then we will focus on you in the webinar, and I would moderate it and make sure that I introduce you and we move from one presenter to the other, and that I would look at the questions and address the questions to the appropriate person, but you all would be doing the talking. And so, again, it's a way for you to really help out other individuals who may not know ONET as well as you do or use it as creatively as you do. And so, again, you'd be helping them to parlay ONET information into more helpful services for individuals who are in the job hunting stage, career transition stage, and what all. So if you're interested in any of these opportunities, please send me an email message, and we can get started from there. And my email is sakesolutions@earthlink.net. And after this webinar is completed, I want to go to my email, and I want to see at least a dozen of you who have indicated, yes, I want to participate in 1, 2, or 3 of these opportunities. And it's a way of not only sharing your knowledge with others, but also highlighting what you do, what your agency does, what your institution does. So it's a way of, in a sense, advertising you as well, focusing on you. And I think that's a very good thing. So please send me an email indicating that you're interested, and we'll move from that stage. I did see another question come in. Can you repeat how we can get those URL addresses? Yes, I sure can. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted on onetacademy.com. And Gary indicated that that was going to be done by the end of the day today. If not today, you might want to check tomorrow. But you'll be able to see listen to this webinar again, but also available will be the PowerPoint slides. And so you can actually download the slides as well and pick up the URL from there. Or listen to the webinar again and pick it up from the slides as I have moved through them today. So in either way, perhaps quicker for you would be just downloading the PowerPoint slides and using the information to put together the listing of URLs. So I don't see any other questions coming in at the moment. So I thank you very much for your attention during this webinar and your participation. And again, please take advantage of these opportunities that we have for you by sending me an email indicating your interest. And then I'll give you a call, send you an email, and we'll go from there and see what we can work out. So again, thank you very much, and I hope you're having a really wonderful day. I'm going to keep my email address up there for the moment so that you can make sure you have it and send me an email message indicating that you're interested. So again, thank you, and it's been an enjoyable experience for me. I hope it has been for you as well. Bye-bye now.